Greenhouse people, I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and in an effort to provide this critical information in any way you choose to consume it, we are pleased to offer this discussion in video and podcast formats. My guest today is someone that we've talked to before, a true expert that always brings fantastic information. It's Dr. Alicain Carlson, who's been with Syngenta Flowers for 9 years in various technical and marketing roles. Before joining Syngenta, she earned her master's and PhD in the cut flower research program with Dr. John Dole at NC State University, studying various aspects of production and post-harvest of cut flowers. She also co-wrote the book Post-Harvest Handling of Cut Flowers and Greens, and found her love of cut flowers through floral design and working on a cut flower farm during college. Appropriately, Alicain's here today to talk about the production of cut flower mums, a key part of Syngenta's large range of specialty cut flowers. Not only is the portfolio impressive, the genetics are innovative, and I know the technical team at Syngenta Flowers plays a key role in developing programs and helping growers succeed with specialty cuts. So, Alicain, welcome. Why don't you go ahead and share your screen and maybe start by telling us why you want to share production best practices for cut flower mums today, and then go ahead and jump into the crop and help our viewers and listeners grow it to its full potential.
Awesome. Yeah. Thank you, Bill. Yeah. Thanks for having for inviting us for this little mum culture talk here today. Really excited to share with you all how to grow cut mums. It's really been a popular topic here in the last few years, and I don't think it's going to slow down. We all know and love mums for their unique flower forms and diversity of colors and amazing vase life. And they are not hard to grow. You just got to know what to do. So that's what we're going to capture here today. So I'm going to start off with taking y'all through a little bit about our Syngenta Flowers assortment. Because, like you said, Bill, Syngenta has been strong in mums for a long time. We have a really great genetics, great breeding, and great quality of the cuttings that we produce. We've been producing mums at our farm in Alva, Florida for a really long time. So we've got production dialed in, we've got shipping dialed in, our stock plants are disease and virus free. Like, it's the quality that you would expect from a professional mum producer of unrooted cuttings. So we've got that down, to make sure that what growers are getting is high quality and clean. And then, with our breeding, this snip here is from the spread of the cut flower assortment that we have in our cut flower brochure, which is really just a distilled version of all of the mums that we have within Syngenta, but we selected these particular ones for their flower color, the unique flower forms. So a lot of them here have like the quilled petals or something like a little bit different bicolors, and then colors that are really appropriate for the time of year that these are being produced. Yeah, so we're really excited about these. And one thing to note is that these are pop mums. So these are our pop mum genetics that we have done extensive trialing on, that, just if you dial in the culture and grow them properly, you can take these same well-known and loved high-quality genetics that we've been growing as pop mums for a long time and grow them as cut flowers. So you can take advantage of year-round availability, high quality cuttings. It's there. So I think this is pretty smart, what we're doing here. And then just kind of zooming in here a little bit, like on this assortment, we get questions on this about the timing. People want to know which ones are early, which ones are mid-flowering, and which ones are kind of late. And we have some really great information on this from all of our years of experience with pop mums. And knowing the response weeks, which is like the number of the weeks of short days it takes for them to initiate. So we have in this particular assortment, I took a snip from our Pot Mum at a Glance table, which we're working on making a version of this that's just for the cut mums that we recommend the most. But really, you can look at those response weeks and see the earlier varieties have a shorter response week. So ones that say like 7, those will be the ones that flower earliest in this application. And then our latest ones is 9 weeks, which Viron, this beautiful, I love this one because I feel like it kind of looks like a sunflower, but it's a mum because it's got the dark center to it. That one is 9 weeks. So that's our latest one. So, there's a couple, 7 to 9, 3-week spread there of our earliest to our latest. So that's how you can kind of get a spread in flowering on these. So they're not all flowering all at once. So that's some data that you want to pay attention to when making, selection of the assortment to grow. All right, so getting into more of the culture. So sharing kind of the big picture here with this series of 3 photos. The first one is of the team that we worked with at Linvale Studios in Gainesville, Virginia, to do our trialing with them. Real world settings, real growers. Doing this to support their business. So it's nice to have that really applicable research to do this with too. But in June is when they go in the ground. We recommend a high tunnel, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide too. But that just helps to protect them from, heavy rains. These are going to be big, beautiful plants, as you can see in the next photos. And it helps to protect them from the rain, and then also helps keep a little bit of cold temperatures off of them as we go into the fall, to help flowering not get too far accelerated, but I'll explain more about that too. But definitely recommend some sort of protection. Go on the ground in June, and then September, they're like hip height there on that person standing there next to that folder, that standing next to that planting, and then flowering starting around the November time frame. So things just go crazy. So June to November here. All right, so a little more about planting. So like I said, a hoop house, highly recommended for protection, keeping those flowers, high quality, and helping to maintain the temperatures a little better as they start to transition in the fall. We absolutely say that support netting is required. The long days that you plant these under in June in the summer, that's what helps stack the stem length, stack the nodes, and get you that stem length. These are really high quality genetics that are very robust. And, we sometimes, could recommend 2 layers of netting too, just to make sure they don't fall over, you don't get stem breakage. It's just a great insurance policy for making sure you get those nice upright stems. And then if you're ordering these as rooted liners, plant them immediately. When you get them, they're going to be ready to go. So, you place your order, put it on your calendar that week that you get them, that you need some time to put them in the ground, because you don't want them to sit in those liner trays for too long. Get them in the ground. For spacing, we recommend like a 6x6 spacing, which if you're familiar with the Hortanova netting, that's 1 per square. So nice and easy, but also like a pretty nice density for getting lots of stems out of a small square footage. So that's why we love specialty cut flower production, because you can get a lot of product out of a small square footage. And then, so some of the tips we have listed here, you always want to make sure, with any plant really, that you're planting into a moist soil. Going from that young plant in a rooted liner, the shock of going from, a cozy little liner tray and then into like dry soil or substrate is not fun for roots. It doesn't make them want to like grow out and push out faster. Yeah, they don't like it. So make sure that you wet your soil before you plant them, so that way they get in tucked in nice and cozy, and it'll help encourage those roots to start to push out into the soil. You want to plant them deep enough to cover the roots. And you, if for some reason they happen to be a little more stretched, if you maybe if you didn't get them in on time when they were delivered, I know it happens, it's okay. But if they stretch in that time, or maybe you rooted your own and they got a little lanky, you can plant them like an inch deeper in the soil to help root them in and like help keep them extra strong uh, for rooting and anchoring. And then once you plant them, you want to water them in. Like best horticultural practice, after you plant, then you water them into thoroughly, and then with a fertilizer solution. So that's going to help get them off to the best start. These are very vigorous plants. When mums are young, they're pushing out vegetative growth and they're hungry. They need fuel to work their best, just like humans do. So we need water and food. We recommend like a complete NPK fertilizer, like a 20-10-20, 200 to 300 ppm nitrogen, just something to keep them nice and green. And then also, since you're planting these in like late June-ish into the ground, it can be really pretty warm in some areas. And then into July and August, this is in the summertime. So you want to make sure that you are watering regularly, and you can overhead water for a little while just to make sure they stay hydrated and they stay watered, and that's okay, just to keep them turgid and get them established well. But then after that, you're going to want to switch to like a drip tape or something, just to keep water off of the foliage to prevent diseases from trying to move in. Okay, so photoperiod. So this is a really important kind of like technical part of this, which is what makes this concept of using using these pot mums as cuts, using the natural day lengths to influence stem length and flowering. So the long days, I have on here like a rough liner arrival timeline on this graph that shows a curve from the beginning of the year to the end of the year across different latitudes, from 25 degrees north to 50 degrees, which is basically from Florida to Vancouver, British Columbia. How the natural day lengths or photoperiods change over the year depending on where you are. So there's greater swings in from like the longest day to the shortest day as you move closer to the North Pole, kind of being like Northern Hemisphere centric here. And then it gets less of a swing as you move closer to the equator, where it's 12 hours every day. So, utilizing these natural day lengths, we can use those long days to encourage vegetative growth in mums, which stacks stem length. That's how we can get good stem length. So you can affect, maybe you tried these before and the stem length was out of control. Like it was just way too tall. It wasn't as much as you needed. Like you had to use way too much netting and it was kind of crazy. Well, then get your liners a little bit later, and that'll make them a little bit shorter, but you don't want to get them too late, because then they're going to be super short, and you're just not going to have the stem length on them. So you can use that planting time to help adjust your stem length. But generally, we found that a like late June, around like week 26 planting time is like offers a reasonable stem length for most locations. And then as the long days peak and then they start to get shorter, that's when mums start to initiate budding. So like the short days help speed along flowering. So then you'll start to get some bud initiation, and then ultimately, depending on those response weeks, whether they're early, mid, or late, then the early ones will start to flower, and then the mid ones, and then the late ones around that like November time period for most locations. Speaking a little bit of a generality here, but you get the gist. So, these mums are coming off in a great time for fall bouquets, for Thanksgiving time, and like hitting that holiday season for flowers. Where I mean, a lot of flower farmers don't have like won't have a ton of product available at that time. Maybe some, like sticks and berries and like dahlias have probably just finished recently, or you've got a few last ones depending on, when your frost date is. So it's a really great time to have super high quality product for in these mums. So it's nice that you can utilize the natural day lengths. Now I have gotten some questions about, okay, well, what if I don't just want them at this time, utilizing the natural day lengths? And there are absolutely ways that you can manipulate the flowering, like the stem length and the flower timing of these mums, if you can manipulate the photoperiod in your growing location. So say you have a greenhouse, there are options to do that because that's what we do with pot mums. So it's not an off the wall idea. You just got to dial in your number of long days and short days to get the timing right. That's why I love plants, Bill. It's like you just I don't know, you just got to know how to work with them, know their language.
How many growers do that? Do manipulate the timing and use supplemental lighting in a greenhouse? Is that common with cut flower mums, or is that just kind of an optional strategy that might open up different market timing?
I as far as there's not as many who are doing it right now, but it's
Mhm.
being explored for that as we, get as markets build more and more locally for wanting locally grown mums
Yeah.
for kind of year round. I think it's something that will gain even more traction, and especially as flower farmers pick up more controlled environments, into their operations
Mhm.
to be able to justify that. Mums are a great crop to be able to do that with, and maybe get a grant to build a greenhouse to be able
Yeah.
to do that.
Well, I mean, and the color range that Syngenta has is, I mean, it's wide. You have great colors for fall, but there's also plenty of colors for other times of year, and with the different flower forms, like it just makes sense that it would be really cool to offer cut mums, at multiple times throughout the year and kind of surprise people when they come in to get bouquets.
Absolutely. And it's, I mean, and, there's some talk, well, I can get mums from offshore uh, all year round
Hmm.
and, the same colors and forms and whatnot. And it's, well, yeah, no, you certainly can. But your differentiator here is that you are a local source.
Yep.
Your vase life is going to be through the roof compared to, varieties that have been, material that's been shipped in from offshore and been in a
Hmm.
box for a long time. So there are still some like really key differentiators that specialty cut flower growers can bring year round to kind of a standard crop like mums. So
That's true. That's really
yeah,
cool.
has a lot of potential. All right, and then trucking along here with temperature. So not only does photoperiod play a really key role in mom flower timing, but temperature does too, which is, one of the reasons why a hoop house is helpful to help kind of mitigate some of those temperature swings and drops in particular that can happen as we, transition into the fall season. So oftentimes, like we will see that the varieties like in a high tunnel, if they're the ones closest to the ends, sometimes we'll see them flower a bit faster than we expect because they're like closer to the door where it can be colder. Or the ones if they're on the edge of the tunnel and like the sides are left open for a night or two, or they're really close to the sidewall, those will tend to flower a little bit faster just because of those little temperature differentials, yeah, within a hoop house. So just something to keep in mind, like if your timing's a little off or you're trying to speed up one that's a little later, or I don't know, try to delay one that's a little early, but you can play around with the temperature gradient in your hoop house. A thing to note here, so the temperatures, controlling them more is really important when you're still just trying to build that stem length. But then once you have your stem length, you don't have to worry so much. I mean, you want to keep them from frost, no doubt. But like you can play around with um, you don't have to be so stringent about them not dropping below 65 Fahrenheit, because you've got the stem length that you need. And then also once you have that stem length, actually having your temperatures drop between 60 and 65 can be a really good thing, and even into the 50s, but again, staying away from frost. Um, it'll actually help hold the flowers kind of just like they were in sort of like a cooler. It slows down respiration. It can also help enhance the colors of the flowers too. Like they'll get a little more saturated and deeper coloration. All right, and then pinching. So the pinching is super important after planting. So this is different from disbudding, which we'll talk about later, but actually pinching the plants about 3 weeks after you plant them. And you'll leave 5 to 6 leaf nodes. And this is what gives you multiple stems per plant. So you'll get about, depending on the variety and how precisely you pinch them, you'll get about 3 to 5 stems per plant. So, and remember, that's one plant per square of Horta Nova netting, 3 to 5 stems from that. That's awesome. So, highly recommend not forgetting this step, because it's just going to improve your productivity and your profitability. I mean, if you do forget it, you're just going to have one big stem poof of a plant. So you want to, yeah, schedule this in, reminder on your phone. I don't know, whatever you do.
Yep.
All right, and then the bud removal techniques. So, this is a concept that we talk about with pop mums too, with getting, one big flower on a stem versus a spray of multiple flowers. Just kind of depends on the look that you want too, which this is also something to play with for specialty growers to differentiate from what's coming in from offshore. So you can manipulate your plants to look different in, you know, big buku blooms or like sprays of blooms, and just do something different. So there's 3 different bud removal techniques, with lateral bud removal, which also is just simply called disbudding in a lot of publications, which is the removal of all the lateral buds, so like the side ones, so only the top main bud is there, and that's how you get like a nice big, like, football mum kind of look, with just one big stem. And I've got some pictures later too. But when you do this, a really important thing is also the timing. You need to remove those lateral buds as soon as possible, so that way the all of the energy and nutrition and just all of the effort of that plant goes into that top terminal bud as soon as possible. So as soon as you can see those buds, you just roll them out, the lateral buds, roll them out really real quick, and you're good to go. And then the next one is center bud removal, which is kind of the opposite of what we just talked about, where you leave all the laterals, but you take out that top terminal one, and that just helps make your spray of flowers a lot more like even, and they all kind of bloom at a similar time, so you get a nice spray of mum flowers. Compared to the lateral bud removal, the flowers will be smaller than that one big one, but you still get the color impact and the fill from the spray. So it's just a different look. And then there's zero bud removal, which you just don't remove anything. And which is how we trialed all of these varieties initially, was just putting them in the ground and not touching them and see what they do. And they all perform perfectly fine, not removing anything. So if when I was going through this, it gave you like raised your blood pressure or something, that you got to like touch like hundreds of plants, and remove so many buds and like do so much manipulation, it's okay. You don't have to. But I definitely suggest, especially if maybe if it's your second time around or even your first time around, just doing some
Hmm.
experimentation. Take a few plants that are in the beginning of your row or on the side or something, and mess around with removing some of the buds and just see what happens. You know. Um,
Is there one technique that's more common than the others? Is it just not removing buds? I mean, is that how most growers do it, or is that a pretty good range of people using different strategies here?
I think most people are just zero bud removal, not really doing much of anything, or maybe removing that center bud just to
Okay.
get because it's just removing, one from each stem, so it's a little
Right.
less labor intensive. Um, but some of that's also variety dependent. So we do have certain varieties that are more suited to doing like the lateral bud removal,
Hmm.
because they will make a nice, beautiful, like sellable single stem. So ones like Golden Gate and Shanghai Red that have like those big, beautiful flower forms, they'll do even better if you remove those laterals, and you'll get a nice big focal flower to sell, which is a great differentiator.
Okay. No, that makes sense.
High value.
Yeah.
Yeah, and remember, the more times you touch it, the more you charge for it.
Right. Good tip.
So that's value. Yeah, don't be afraid to charge for all the effort that you put into growing your product. All right, and then here's just a nice photo series from that Longwood had online that shows, they have an amazing mom display every year. So they have some great techniques for doing this too. Um, for the lateral bud removal, where that apical one is
Mm.
circled here, and then you can see this person's like pinching out um, the laterals there on this side. So they're really small, and just getting in there and getting them out as soon as possible. And then here's some photos from the trials that we did in Virginia, where the center bud removal versus lateral bud removal. And this is, I should have put it on here, but I think it's Pittsburgh purple.
Mm.
One that does make a nice big flower if you do the lateral bud removal. You can see we missed a few down there on the stem, but it's still a much bigger flower in the ones where we removed the lateral buds versus the one where we removed um, the center bud and let it spray. Okay, and then just some last tips for watering and fertilization, like through growing and flowering. So they're big bodacious plants, as we saw in those photos that I shared in the beginning of the progression of the crop. They need water. They're putting on a lot of vegetative growth in the summertime. So don't neglect these, because if you do, just like with any other plant, they're going to attract pests and diseases because they're going to be stressed out. So make sure you're watering them, make sure you're feeding them, um, to keep the spider mites away and to keep, the thrips away as much as possible. But make sure you're feeding so they stay nice and green, because that's going to make sure that you have um, beautiful flowers, but also vase life. So they need to be fed so they can build up those carbohydrates from photosynthesis. Um, and then like store it in there. But a weird and wonderful thing about mums is that they do actually like to be, you can pull back on the fertilization as they like 2 to 3 weeks before you're ready to harvest them, because it actually improves their
Mm.
post-harvest life. So we've seen this in like lots of university trialing, like there's been a lot of academic work with this, um, with potted mums, that it improves their vase life if you pull back on the fertilization before you ship. So Yeah, it's the same thing here. And then those pests and diseases, you know, you got to be preventive with pests and diseases. These are going to be lush, delicious plants on your farm, like at a time when you know, especially towards the end when things start to flower, like maybe when there's not a lot of things for bugs to hang out on, they're going to beeline for your flowers potentially. So you want to make sure that you're ahead of that, that you're preventing those spider mites, preventing those thrips, so that way they don't affect the quality of your flowers. So, you know, as Syngenta, you know, Syngenta Flowers, we have the genetics, but then we have our Syngenta chemistry colleagues who have great programs for helping to build already, as well as the products to support them to help protect your cut flower crops and the mums in particular. So there's a link here to a PDF for creating a program for mums in particular, where we have great recommendations for how to do that. All right, and then we'll finish off here with post-harvest care because you know, as Bill mentioned, I co-authored the post-harvest handling book that you can get through the ASCFG with lots of great tips. And you know, post-harvest, it's really important. I mean, when your product leaves your farm, it's not hands off. You know, it's still, you're still responsible for the quality of that product. And the ways you can do that is by making sure you are also keen on how to care for them post-harvest before they leave your place. So that way your florist customers and then their customers get the vase life that they expect out of your product. So your growing practices, like I mentioned with the water and the fertilizer, that plays into the expected vase life you can get. Keeping bugs off of things, that plays into your vase life. And then the next thing is when you harvest flowers. So for mums, and this is also something that we learned from growing them as pot mums, you want to harvest them when they're about 50% open, so half open. And the photo that's on this slide is from the pot mums and when we recommend shipping them as well, and it's the same thing. So it's the stage 3, and we have a photo here of what it looks like for a decorative mum, you know, one that's a little more poofy with all of its petals, and then a daisy type that has the open center. So you see what half open kind of looks like um, based on the flower and then like the spray of the plant. So if you harvest them too soon, then they may not open fully and your customer won't get the full experience of the whole flower. It just kind of stalls them. And if you harvest them too late, then you're just kind of uh, uh, using up some of that full potential vase life that they have. Um, so I would err on the side of harvesting a little too late than early, just to be conservative there. But then when you cut them, you want to put them into a holding solution. And this is a commercial holding solution, and a holding solution has sugars in it. So it acts like carbohydrates that help to feed the flowers and help them to open and continue having like vibrant color in them. So the sugars help with color and further opening. And then you can also use the slow release chlorine tablets. A lot of people like the ones from the Chrysol CVBN, and they just help keep the water clean. So that way the water can keep flowing up the stem and the flowers stay hydrated. So I like to think of cut flower stems like straws. And you want to make sure that water can flow up that straw, you know, really, really cleanly. So you know, use sharp clippers when you're cutting your stems at all times, and keep the solution that they're in really flowable and easy to take up. So you want to make sure there aren't leaves in there, that bacteria isn't starting to build up. Um, uh, it's basically like make sure you're not chewing on the end of your straw, so clean clippers. And and it's a lot harder to drink a milkshake through a straw than it is water. So keep your bucket water and not a sludgy, gross bacterial milkshake. Okay. um, and then and then the vase life you should expect to get on them is like 2 to 3 weeks, if not more, if you handle them properly. So harvest them well, put them into the right solution. They tolerate cold storage very well, and they'll last. Um, and then my last point I have on this slide is stripping the foliage. So especially so that it doesn't, so that it's not below the water line, because that will contribute to bacterial buildup and making it a milkshake in the bucket instead. So yeah,
This
yeah,
is great. I think that yeah, your expertise on post harvest and some of these pro tips are phenomenal, and I hope that listeners and viewers are taking notes because it's going to help them not only with this crop but with plenty of others as well.
absolutely. Yeah, yeah, for sure. Oh, and also one thing that I wanted to mention, Bill, because we have gotten questions or like comments on this, is they like for some crops, there'll be kind of flushes of flowers, and like, the different parts of the different parts of the row, or the different plants within a planting will flower at different times.
Mhm.
You need to plan for these mums. Each variety, the whole row is going to flush at a time. Like that whole variety is going to
Okay.
flush at one time. So that's why it's good to like know the timing of the ones that are early and the ones that are late, to kind of help plan your harvest
Mhm.
labor. Otherwise, if you get all of them that are within like the same response week time, you're going to get a huge flush of stuff that you've got to harvest all at one time, which sometimes is a good thing, sometimes is a bad thing, like depending on your labor. But the thing to really remember with this is, because they have such a great base life,
Mhm.
yeah, harvest them all. If you can put them in a cooler, great, and they'll keep. Just make sure you keep up with your inventory of, like, how long they've been in
Right.
there, so you still get a good vase life. But um I don't know, of all the problems to have, I think that's probably one of the better ones.
For sure.
But just wanted to share that tip for like kind of what to expect and how to potentially mitigate that.
So you want to plan your labor when they come in so that you get them planted immediately. Then
Yep,
you want to plan your labor at the end of the line, knowing the timing of those mums so that you can get them harvested and off to your customers all in good time.
that's right. Yep.
Makes a lot of sense. Well, thank you so much. Your expertise on cut flowers is great. I love listening to you talk about cut flowers. I think that cut mums are beautiful and certainly a flower form that people recognize. So I would imagine they have really good consumer demand. Like I said, your post-harvest tips were great, but also your tips on the photo period and possibly playing around with that a little bit if you have the structures and the environment to have cut mums at different times during the year, and then the different disbudding techniques to create unique looks. Certainly using some of those flower forms to create a spray type stem is really cool and maybe something that folks haven't seen that much. And then those ones with the giant blooms to just create one big, like crazy bloom is gonna really look neat in bouquets. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Thank you.
So before we close, can you let the viewers and listeners know where they can find more information? I will put links to the cut flower brochure and some of the resources that you provided, but is there a one central repository for Syngenta cut flowers that folks should go check out?
Absolutely. Yeah. So on our Syngenta Flowers website, we have a dedicated page for our cut flower assortment, and all the various culture guides and information and tips and tricks and guides and things. Yeah. So on our Syngenta Flowers website and our cut flower landing page. So
Perfect, perfect. And we've recorded videos with you guys on dahlias, on even using Sunfinity sunflowers as cuts. So I will put links to those as well. It's fun. You guys have such a good assortment that I think that anybody growing cut flowers should definitely take a look at. And thank you again, Allison. I really appreciate it.
yeah. Thanks, Bill. Thanks, everybody.
For sure. And if you like this installment, be sure to subscribe to the Tech on Demand podcast on your favorite app and find dozens, maybe hundreds of Tech on Demand videos on the Ball Seed YouTube channel. Once again, I'm your host, Bill Calkins, and on behalf of Dr. Carlson and the brilliant team at Syngenta Flowers, take care out there.